Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Welcome to another NFL video. I'm going to be doing my 1.0 2021 NFL mock draft for just the first round. I'm not going to go through and do all 7 rounds, but we're going to talk about the first round. As always, I'm going to be doing it from a fantasy perspective. So yes, about half the first round as I see it is going to be defensive picks. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about defensive picks. I'll just kind of say I think a defensive pick is going to go here, who I kind of think it's going to be, and we'll move on to try and target the impact of who these players are going to be offensively and how they're going to affect that team's offense for fantasy purposes, because that's what we most care about on this channel. So if you guys are new to the channel, appreciate y'all being here. We have that 10% ask, which means that we want 10% of the views to turn into likes. So please drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell if you have been watching the NBA videos. Hope that you're doing well in NBA DFS, and I'll probably come through with a 2.0 mock draft and a 3.0 mock draft as we get closer. We'll include some trades once we get some more information. The Senior Bowl is over, once that is over, and pro days and everything else. So we'll update this as we get to the end of April with a couple of more videos. So thank you guys for being here. Let's get to the mock draft. Number 1, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have earned the right to select Trevor Lawrence. I don't think that there's very much intrigue with this pick. There's a couple of picks that, looking at other mock drafts that basically anybody is doing, I would say that there's 2 picks that are the consensus. Trevor Lawrence being one of them. Another one is later, but I've talked myself into going a different direction with that pick. So we'll kind of see how that pans out a little bit later in the first round. But Trevor Lawrence is the obvious pick. I don't think that we really need to spend very much time here talking about what it is. He will elevate this entire offense for the Jaguars. They have some really good pieces at wide receiver. They have some a phenomenal rookie running back going into his second year. And Trevor Lawrence is just going to slot right in and make them a better offense. So Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pick. Then we go to the Jets at 2. And while I'm not doing this mock draft with trades, I think there is a high probability that this pick gets traded. And regardless of whether the Jets keep this pick, I would assume that they're going to get rid of Sam Darnold if they keep this pick, which means that they would be taking a quarterback. If this pick gets traded, whether the pick gets traded to Houston or Atlanta, or the Detroit Lions, or Carolina, or on a far out basis, maybe the Patriots, anybody who trades for this number 2 pick is going to be selecting a quarterback, because you're going to have to pay quarterback prices to obtain this pick. And if it's Houston that trades Watson to the Jets, they're going to be taking a quarterback. If it's any of those other teams, they're taking quarterback. So I'm slotting in a quarterback in this spot. And there's 2 that are basically at the top of everybody's board. One is Zach Wilson from BYU. The other one is Justin Fields from Ohio State. And there's a lot of debate whether or not can an Ohio State quarterback come into the NFL, because other ones, I think that's really lazy analysis. It's like, well, other Ohio State quarterbacks have not really panned out in the NFL, but like each individual quarterback is different. And they kind of have to be judged on their own merits. So I think Justin Fields is an interesting prospect. I think that he can certainly do well at the NFL level, but I do believe that Zach Wilson is going to be the pick here at 2, and that can obviously change. Somebody can fall, like we've seen it happen before. We saw Daniel Jones go to the Giants. We've seen Mitch Trubisky go 2 over some other higher rated quarterbacks. So if somebody falls in love with one of the other quarterbacks in this draft, whether it's like Trey Lance from North Dakota State, or if they fall in love with Justin Fields, then sure. There's an argument to be made that somebody else can go there, but for the sake of this 1.0 mock draft, I believe that Zach Wilson's going to be the pick at 2. Regardless of which team he's going to go to, I think he is the number 2 pick in this draft. Now we have the Dolphins at 3. And maybe I'm just having a little bit too much fun with the Dolphins here. There's a few picks that I think are in play. One, they can go with the offensive tackle from Oregon if they wanted to go that route. Getting offensive line help, picking an offensive lineman in the top 10 has paid dividends for years for so many different teams. Yes, and somebody say, well, what about this one guy that failed? Like, you don't need to be the red team. You don't need to tell me, well, this one guy failed, so therefore we can't ever pick an offense. Like, you're not 100% right in this spot. Like, this guy looks like a game changer. Typically, when you pick an offensive tackle in the top 10, more often than not, they turn into a Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman, and that's why teams invest so much in those first round picks that have the most leverage, let's say, the most valuable players to or positions to pick in the first round: quarterbacks, offensive tackles, edge rushers, cornerbacks, wide receivers, and that's why you see the majority of those players going in the first round. If you look at all the picks, that's mostly where people spend their draft equity. I don't think that they go this route, and maybe I'm memeing a little bit, but why not put Tua back together with Devonta Smith and just kind of see what happens when you get a really, really talented wide receiver to go with your young and emerging quarterback, who I do think takes a big step forward here in his second year. He was coming off of an injury, no OTAs, no mini camp, no games in preseason, didn't start until halfway through the year, was just learning things, did not look great. I agree with everybody who's gonna say, yeah, well, Tua didn't look great. I agree, but like, quarterbacks can take a big leap in their second season. He's got a plethora of tight ends that can do things with Shaheen and with Gesicki, very athletic tight ends on that roster. They still have Devontae Parker. They have the cap space to sign another wide receiver if they wanted to, but there's arguments whether or not Jamar Chase is going to be the number one wide receiver selected in this draft. And for, you know, he's an amazing wide receiver, taking nothing away from him. I just personally have Devonta Smith slightly ahead of him. If you have it the other way and you've got Jamar Chase ahead of him, fine, put it the other way. There's a lot of arguments that Smith is not big enough. He's too skinny to make an impact at the NFL level, but some guys can just play the game. And I think if they go with this, and maybe, like I said, maybe I'm memeing a little bit here, putting back together that Alabama pass game, but I think that that's the direction that they go, knowing that they have to get more dynamic with this offense, and Devonta Smith basically makes them do that. Now, we go to Atlanta at 4. I think that this is going to be another quarterback, and I think it's going to be Justin Fields because Zach Wilson was gone at 2. I think that they get their longer term sort of quarterback in this spot, whether they're drafting him and keeping Matt Ryan, whether they're getting rid of Matt Ryan, doesn't matter. I think that Fields is going to be the pick here at 4. Clearly they can go other routes as they have a lot of other needs on that team, but a quarterback is just too valuable to have on that rookie scale contract for the next 4 to 5 years before they really kick in, which is going to leave Cincinnati in the absolute dream situation for them getting the offensive lineman that they need to protect Joe Burrow coming off of that ACL tear. We'll monitor his injury. I know he just kind of started walking again a few weeks ago. We'll monitor through OTAs. We'll monitor through minicamp. We'll monitor through preseason and preseason games to see if he's going to be on time. And everybody heals differently from any sort of major reconstructive surgery like that. But what we saw from Joe Burrow was that he's an extremely competent quarterback with very good weapons around him, an emerging T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, who's very good, and a twilighting AJ Green, to say the least. And maybe they get them some more help down the road in this draft in the second and third round. Joe Mixon coming back from the injuries that he had can always replace with a backup running back later. Very replaceable position. No offense to any NFL running backs. Respect everything that they do, but we know that that is a very replaceable position. The offense is set to go, and they can draft more depth at defense, but getting protection for Joe Burrow is got to be priority number 1. So drafting somebody like Sewell and then signing another offensive lineman to bolster that line is everything that this Cincinnati offense needs moving forward, and we hope that Burrow will be ready to go. That leaves Philly. As you see, this this site that we're using, the Draft Network, is the site that I'm using for this mock draft. Needs at wide receiver, cornerback, linebacker, tight end. They got a lot of needs. They have 2 quarterbacks, which means they don't have a quarterback. And now that leaves us with them using draft capital in the first round last year on Jalen Reagor, and then he got injured. Justin Jefferson went after him. People were like, well, what if? They still have a need at wide receiver. Deshaun Jackson is on the wrong side of the age tree. He's on the wrong side of that age hill at this point. He has been injured consistently for the last few years. And they need to get more weapons on the outside instead of dealing with guys like Fulgham, instead of dealing with guys like Greg Ward Jr. They need to get playmakers on the outside instead of having to lean on the corpse of Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, who's not a corpse. And then hopefully Rager can stay healthy this year. But that leaves, to me, between Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase. And I don't think that all three of these guys are going to go, these three wide receivers are going to go super early. They could. I think one of them falls, and the one that falls, I believe, is going to be Waddle, meaning that I think that Chase goes here to the Eagles at 6. Going to 7, the Lions bring in a brand new coaching staff, a brand new regime. They're going to lose Matthew Stafford for all intents and purposes. And unless they find themselves a free agent quarterback to use as a placeholder, I think that they are going to use this pick on a quarterback. Yeah, there's other things they can do. They can draft defense in this spot. You do have a very high T coach, wants to be the alpha male and bite off kneecaps and everything else. But like, if you're a brand new coach, you're probably going to get that brand new coach and front office. You're going to get them a quarterback, which leaves North Dakota State's Trey Lance. Obviously, there's going to be the arguments that he did not play against a really high caliber of competition. There is a very high probability that they try and trade up in this spot to get themselves one of the bigger program quarterbacks to plug in here, especially with as high T as that coaching staff is. But I think that the pick here is a quarterback. They have all the other pieces they need on offense. They want to run the ball. If they want to get a bridge quarterback to put in front of Trey Lance to allow him 1 year to maybe marinate, that's fine. But I do believe that he is going to be the pick, or a quarterback is going to be the pick in this spot, leaving Carolina. And there's a lot of things that Carolina can do, right? We know what they have and what they don't have. Teddy Bridgewater, clearly not the long-term answer, I don't think, at quarterback, but I don't think that they can reach for a quarterback in this spot. The offense looks really solid, though they may lose Curtis Samuel this offseason. And while teams don't typically spend high draft capital on a year-in, year-out basis on tight ends, I think that Kyle Pitts fills a need, gives them another offensive playmaker, and is that new breed, new generation of tight end who's essentially just an extra wide receiver in a bigger body, to give them somebody to go to when they get around the goal line, right? So they've got Robbie Anderson, they've got DJ Moore, who I respect and like a lot, and they will be getting Christian McCaffrey back in 2021. But Kyle Pitts fills a need for this team and makes them extremely dynamic on offense. There is also a possibility that they go defense here, maybe somebody like Micah Parsons. Maybe they reach for somebody like Surtain, because that defense does have a lot of things that they can do. But I think Kyle Pitts is the pick here, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when a team spends top 10, top 15 capital on a tight end, even though tight ends typically take a year of seasoning to get used to the NFL life nowadays with the way that passing games are. He might make an impact that increases as the year goes on in terms of fantasy. The Broncos, I do think, goes defense in this spot. I think that they take maybe Micah Parsons from Penn State. I'm not going to spend that much time on defense. They have all the weapons on offense. Do the Broncos to do work. They do need to get a better quarterback, because I don't think that Drew Lock is the answer. So we're just going to plug in the defensive player and move on. There's a couple of ways that the Cowboys can go. I mentioned that there was one more sort of consensus pick, and that consensus pick for the Cowboys at 10 has been Patrick Surtain from Alabama. Fills a need, something that they have to get. But I think that there's going to be another direction that they're a little bit pulled towards for this spot. And I think that they have to rebuild that offensive line. So I think that there is a player that they're going to take here as opposed to going with Surtain. That's the easy spot, right? Like, everybody thinks Surtain's going to go there, and he very well could go to that spot. But Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle from Northwestern, building this offensive line, especially with Dak Prescott coming off of that injury. I do think Dak Prescott stays in Dallas in 2021. I would be shocked if he moves, especially considering how that team looked offensively with him there versus how that team looked offensively with him not there. And the key to that entire offense is timing and offensive line. So to me, them going offensive line here, either with Cosme from Texas or Slater from Northwestern or Darisaw from Virginia Tech. I'm going to say that it's Slater, and then we're going to move on to the Giants, who in this spot I think go defense, and I don't see him at the top of the board. Gregory Rousseau took this year off. I think that picking a defensive player is something that they just have to do. They've got plenty of spots on offense. If Kyle Pitts is still available, there is an out for them with Evan Ingram that they can release him without having to take a big cap hit. So I could see them, if he's available, releasing Evan Ingram and going with the tight end. But as it is in this mock draft that I've done, I have him already going. So I'm going to plug in an edge rusher here in this spot. And I click trade because I didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to plug in Rousseau in this spot, leaving me with San Francisco. And I do have Patrick Surtain going to them if he is still on the board, if he does not go to the Cowboys. The Chargers could also go defense or could go offensive line. I'm going to have them pick an offensive lineman here. Clearly, they've got all the pieces that they need. You've got a young quarterback. You want to build that offensive line up as strong as you can. They also have a really strong defense at all three levels with Bosa and with Ingram and with James coming back off of injury, and the cornerbacks that they have. This is a very talented team, and the way that you're going to elevate it even further is to get somebody like Herbert a little bit more time in the pocket and bolster that offensive line. The Vikings, I think, also go offensive line in this spot. I'm going to plug in Darisaw here. Again, another offense with tons of talent on the outside. We'll see if they keep Cousins. A lot of rumors rumbling that they may deal Cousins this offseason. Jefferson and Thielen on the outside, Cook on the inside. Defense is solid, so bolstering the offensive line makes sense. Now, here could be the first reach of the first round. Patriots got really bad quarterback play last year from Cam Newton. Obviously, I've been a Cam Newton stan forever. I think there is a distinct chance that they fall in love with Mac Jones from Alabama in this spot, and maybe they trade down. Maybe they take a defensive player in this spot. We've seen them trade down in multiple first rounds before. There's a distinct possibility that Mac Jones is going to be available at the back end of the first round or be available in the early second round. And if that's what their intel tells them they can do that, I just think that Mac Jones is going to go to the Patriots in this spot. I think they have to leave this draft with a quarterback. My thoughts may change. I'm open to change my mind when we get to 2.0 and 3.0. And I know that that's a reach, but reaches happen in drafts, and I think that that's where they go. I think that we're going to end up with a cornerback here for the Cardinals, their biggest need spot. So let's plug in Farley. The Raiders, again, I think that they go defense in this spot too. Let's put in Kwity Paye. I think that they have to go defense here. The Dolphins, once again at 18. This is their own pick. Their pick at 3 was from Houston, because that's what Houston does. They just gave away all their picks because Bill O'Brien was not a good GM. Can I meme a little bit here? Are you guys going to be okay with that? Are we all right with this? You got Tua. Why not just put all of the Alabama wide receivers around Tua, let Parker roll 3 wide with 1 tight end, put Gaskin in the backfield, and let's see what this offense can do in year 2 of Tua time. The highest remaining player on the board, the highest rated player remaining on the board, chat says roll Fins. I'm on board with that. I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle. 2 first-round wide receivers. I know that realistically, they're probably not going to pick 2 first-round wide receivers. They'll probably pick an offensive lineman here. Maybe they'll pick a defensive player, maybe an edge rusher, maybe something else. But you know what? Let me meme. It's my draft. I'll do a 2.0 where I might change off of that. But for 1.0, I want to see roll Fins. Going to the Washington football team. They're set at running back. Front 7 is phenomenal. There is a chance that they take a cornerback in this spot, as that's what they need to improve. I am of the assumption that if they have this pick, I think there's a very realistic chance that they trade this to obtain a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback this offseason, right? So there's distinct chance that they don't pick in this spot. Assuming that they do pick in this spot, I think that there's 2 positions that are most likely. The 2 positions that I feel are most likely here are cornerback, and I'm looking at my notes over here on my second screen, are cornerback and wide receiver. So having Waddle gone from this spot, I think they go with a complementary type wide receiver, or they go with Horn. I'm going to plug in Horn here, fixing one of the biggest problems, the secondary on that defense, and just making them extremely scary defensively with Terry McLaurin, with Logan Thomas. Yes, I could have gone wide receiver there to go with another speed guy to complement Logan Thomas underneath and Terry McLaurin basically everywhere on the field, and groom that third wide receiver. But they do have Sims, who came on late in the year, and they have other players that they feel are capable, and you can always find another wide receiver. This is a very deep wide receiver draft that I think falls into the third round with quality depth at wide receiver, not unlike last year and not unlike the year before. Very deep wide receiver drafts each of the last 2 years, and this one included. Moving on to the Bears. What do I have for the Bears? I think the Bears are going to go offensive line, which leaves them with somebody like Mayfield or Jenkins or Leatherwood. So I'm going to take Mayfield from Michigan in this spot. Now we're getting to a spot in the draft where I think there's going to be a lot of defensive players taken. So the Colts, as much as that defensive line meant to them, I think that they're fine offensively. They may not pick in this spot, as well as they're going to be in the market to trade for a quarterback with Phillip Rivers retiring, and knowing that they should not really go with Jacoby Brissett with them being in the championship window. And as strong of an offensive line as they have, I think that they go defense with this pick. So let's plug in Joseph Asai in that spot. The Titans at 22. What did I have for the Titans? Another defensive pick here. So whether it's going to be somebody like Zaven Collins, right? A big kind of outside linebacker, edge rusher sort of play. Jalen Phillips is the one that I have plugged in this spot personally. I think they pick somebody who can rush the quarterback and put and apply some pressure. The Jets at 23. We know that they need help. We know that they need help at cornerback. Asante Samuel Jr. Is the best cornerback that I have left on my personal board, going in that spot. The Steelers are interesting. Now, the Steelers can go multiple routes here. We can get kind of funky with this pick. We can go with Zaven Collins, because the Steelers do tend to go defense. But the Steelers could also be the team that goes with a running back in this spot, because it's very possible that James Conner not back with the team next year. It's also extremely possible that, not possible, we just know that Benny Snell has been like fine but not thrilling. He's not been a game-breaking guy. He's got his own warts and issues. He's not somebody that you're just going to say, it's a replaceable position, but like, he's not a difference maker in the least. And while I side with not taking a running back with your first round pick, I could see a team like the Steelers taking a running back with this first round pick. That leaves Travis Etienne, who a lot of people are really high on. It's going to be a matter of which board you're looking at, who you're reading, or who you're evaluating. If you're yourself an evaluator, if you're going to have Etienne as your number one running back, or if you're going to have Najee Harris as your number one running back. I personally think that they go defense in this spot. So plugging somebody in like Owosu Koromoa, or where's the other dude? Or Zaven Collins from Tulsa, another big body that can apply pressure to the quarterback. I think that that's kind of where they're going to go with this spot and kind of fill other needs. Now we also have the second pick for pick number 25, the Jaguars from the Rams. I think that defense is the spot here. And I think they try and look, you could very well make an argument for Vera Tucker from USC to bolster the offensive line, or one of the other offensive tackles, but I think that they go defense because I think that they have what they need offensively, and that they have to fill some holes on defense because they were just a sieve for the last couple of years. Leading us to the Browns, and the Browns, I don't know that they want to draft. Look, this is a team that has an identity, and they've had that identity for like 30 plus years, and they have a head coach that feeds into that identity where they want to run the football. You can argue that you should be passing, you shouldn't be, but whatever. Odell Beckham Jr. will come back Baker was much better as a game manager without having Odell Beckham Jr. out there to force it to. Landry, very talented on the outside. They have other complementary wide receivers who did very well in Higgins, as well as the other cast carriers that they have. They have depth at tight end. They have Hooper. They have Njoku. They've got a bunch of players that can play at that position. And I kind of feel like they go offensive line in this spot. So give me the guard from USC here, leading us to the Ravens. And while I want the Ravens, here's the thing. I want the Ravens to take a wide receiver in this spot. I really do. Because they converted Hollywood Brown from the speedy get down the field sort of player to a short and intermediate route guy who gets a lot of targets, and they will take shots to him deep. So somebody like Kadarius Toney, who is similar, right, from Florida, and is an absolute speed demon, right? Like, I think that there's too much redundancy there with what they already have. And while Boykin may not be the answer, he is a bigger bodied guy who can get down the field. He just hasn't progressed. Even though he did come on in the second half of the season, he's just not that type of guy, as opposed to somebody like Terrence Marshall, who, you know, LSU wide receiver, I'm good. Big bodied guy, fits in with what they do offensively, and would plug right into this offense so that all of the short and intermediate stuff doesn't have to be forced to Hollywood, and he can operate a little bit more down the field. Terrence Marshall does have some downfield ability as well, and so that all that short and intermediate stuff doesn't have to be forced to Mark Andrews. So I think that Marshall just kind of makes sense in this spot. Moving on to the Saints, who I think go defense here. So TCU safety could be a pick in this spot. The Syracuse safety could be a pick in this spot. Offensive line could be a pick in this spot, but I'm going to give him the linebacker Nick Bolton from Missouri. Going to the Packers, who will probably draft a backup quarterback or another running back. So sure, maybe Najee Harris ends up in this spot, and they re-sign Aaron Jones, and then they just have 4 running backs on the team to go with and really piss off Aaron Rodgers. But I'm not going to do that because I'm not like that. I'm going to go with Kadarius Toney from Florida. I'm going to give Aaron Rodgers, who I believe will be back in Green Bay next year with all the rumors of floated around. He said he wasn't happy. He then said on a podcast the next day, I can't see myself going anywhere. They've gotten what they can get out of MVS, who's a big body downfield threat, but makes a lot of mistakes and drops the ball. Sure. They also have Lazard on the other side. Devontae Adams is an American hero. He is a treasure, and he needs to be protected at all costs. And the way that you protect him is to move the safeties even further off the line of scrimmage by getting a Kadarius Toney and allowing Aaron Rodgers to have more weapons, which leads us to the Bills. There's a lot of ways the Bills can go here. One would be to bolster the offensive line. You do have Tevin Jenkins. We do have Liam Eichenberg still on the board. There could be another offensive lineman that's a little bit lower down, an interior one like Wyatt Davis or Trey Smith, if we were being smart with this. But this is my 1.0 mock draft, and I don't need to be smart with this all the way around. And while they did spend mid-round draft capital on Zach Moss, and they did spend on Singletary a couple of years ago, seeing Etienne or Najee Harris in this spot is going to be extremely tempting for the Bills, even though I don't know if it's the route that they're going to go because of the redundancy that they have in that position. I'll stay with the smart play. I'll say that they go with an interior offensive lineman. Let's say it's Wyatt Davis in this spot, but man, could you imagine either Etienne or Harris and their pass catching ability in that emerging Buffalo offense with Steph Diggs, with Smokey Brown, plugging in a running back like that they could use both to hand the ball off to and throw it to. Harris and Etienne, both accomplished pass catchers. I can't make the argument that that's the route that they're going to go. So I have them going there. And then we're probably going to finish off this first round with 2 defensive lineman picks. Barrymore going to the Buccaneers. And this could be flipped if the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl, obviously. And Azeez Ojulari for the final pick in the first round. Finalizing my draft, as you see, very offensive up at the top. That's just kind of how I see it. That might change as the weeks move on. 3 quarterbacks in the top 4. I think that could be the way it's going to go, and 4 quarterbacks in the top 10. We're going to have to see how this shakes out, because I think that trades are going to highly dictate what happens in the first round. There's many quarterbacks that are currently in the NFL that could be traded for first round picks. And with as many teams at the back end of the top 10 that I believe will be interested in moving up in the first round, with motivated teams like the Jets and the Dolphins to trade down in the first round who don't have a need at quarterback, or theoretically should not have a need at quarterback. There's going to be a lot of shakeups in this draft. I don't think it's going to be drafted in the slate that it is set for right now. So we'll get to one with trades in a few weeks. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you later. Look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.